Again, I'm Taylor Bohmann. I'm the Senior Director of Sales at Influential, and welcome to our Fireside Chat, Breaking Barriers to Entrepreneurship. So what is entrepreneurship? I looked online today and I found a lot of different definitions, but I used Investopedia. So it states that an entrepreneur is an individual who creates a new business, bearing most of the risk and enjoying the rewards. The process of setting up a business is known as entrepreneurship. The entrepreneur is an innovator, a source of ideas, goods, services, and procedures. I founded a company in 2016, and I quickly realized that entrepreneurship is not for everyone. You know, you need to dedicate your daily hours to entirely investing in your business, no social events, and no downtime. Real entrepreneurs work hard and play hard after the business is up and running successfully with revenue coming in. Even after launching a successful business, you know, the need to always be committed and dedicated to your company never quite switches off. So I'm super excited and honored to introduce a true-hearted entrepreneur and my fellow Milwaukeean, Jackie Hermes, founder and CEO of Accelity. The agency helps SaaS startups get to revenue and grow way faster than they would if they didn't use Jackie. With nearly 100,000 followers on LinkedIn, Jackie sparks discussions about the daily life and challenges of growing a bootstrapped company, her adventures in personal development, and so much more. And in my opinion, Jackie is definitely one of the top leaders in Milwaukee. She advises and mentors multiple companies and is also the founder of Women's Entrepreneurship Week in Milwaukee. And fun fact, she's an adoptive foster parent as well, and is hopeful she will have hobbies outside of working in the near future. And welcome, Jackie.
Kind of given up. My bio says I'm going to look for hobbies and it's false. So I should probably delete that.
Oh no, you're super busy, which is a good thing. Again, this is a fireside chat, so it's all about Jackie and her entrepreneurship journey. We're going to give advice to entrepreneurs that are looking to break into the scene, and also current entrepreneurs how they can excel in this world of entrepreneurship. So Jackie, in 3 words, this is like a simple question, but it's also a very hard question, I feel like. Usually this question's asked in like interviews or like on dating profiles, but how would you describe yourself in 3 words?
Okay, so I got the prep questions and I texted this question to my husband, and I don't even think I'm going to share what he said, but I was like, this is not helpful. I'm trying to come up with some solid words to describe myself. Okay, so this is what I have. Straightforward is one that I've always been extremely straightforward. And it was kind of like to my demise earlier in my career because I was not as tactful as I needed to be. But now I think it's very beneficial for me. Hardworking, I think you have to be as an entrepreneur, and just honest too. I try to be just really honest about everything that I experience. I'll try to be really honest today with all of the questions. So those are my 3.
I would agree with you. I've known you for a few years, and those 3 characteristics definitely fits you as a woman and an entrepreneur. And let's talk about, you know, that work-life balance, especially in like the new working remote world. So what does your typical workday look like, and how do you manage your work-life balance, being an entrepreneur, a CEO, a speaker, a wife, and a mom of 3 kids?
I know that work-life balance is an important topic to everyone, and I'm going to just go ahead and say that I don't have a ton of it. I mean, my life just kind of flows together, right? Like I will wake up and I know if I have something really important to do, I will literally roll over and grab my computer and work for an hour. Now, I know a lot of people say not to do that, like getting on screens is terrible right away in the morning. I am of the opinion that whatever works for you is what you should do, right? So then I typically will do that, get my kids off to school, work out. I block off my mornings for focused work time. Typically. So I try not to take any meetings in the morning so that I have time to get things done. I feel like when we leave our schedules open and then you have meetings half the day and they're all like dispersed all over the place, And it's just really hard to get anything done in between. I take all my meetings between 12 and 5 or 12 and 6, usually dinner with the kids, and then sit down and work for a few hours at night. But it's also, I mean, it depends on, like, am I driving gymnastics carpool that day and whatever else is going on. And then I will usually work like a couple hours each day on the weekend too. I know. Again, I think a lot of people would say that these are bad habits, like rolling over and working right away or working on the weekend. And I think that you have to figure out what works the best for you and keeps you sane and do that.
Exactly. It's like whatever works on an individual level. I know when I wake up, I usually check my emails first. I check Slack, and then I'll go through social media as well. And I think it's also very important to block off your day. I know Influential, we have a power hour weekly where, sales individuals can prospect for that full hour and send out emails, just because your day gets so busy with just meeting with clients and internal meetings. So I think that's huge and very important. Okay, the next question, let's talk about burnout. Burnout's real. There's a great resignation happening within the workplace. Employees are sick of being unappreciated, getting an increased workload, and are getting burnt out to a place of no return. So I'm curious, how do you prevent burnout in your personal and professional world?
Yeah, the great resignation is almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy here, right? Because it's like people are burnt out, so they're quitting. And the people that are still there are just getting that work distributed to them. And then companies are like, good luck, you have twice the job, but I'm not going to pay you anymore. You don't get a new title. You're just going to work harder. And then those people quit, and the people that are there still, it's really, I don't see an end to this. And it's also very good because the power is moving into the hands of employees, which it truly should have been in the first place, because they are what keeps the business going. So I think this is all long overdue. I think when I look to prevent burnout, one of the main things is knowing how to identify the signs so that I know it's coming. I have an employee on my team that has been with me for a long time, and she used to get burnout like every 6 to 12 months. And after we went through that together a few times, I was like, okay, like we've been through this a few times. Now, what are the signs? Are there certain things that are happening? Are there like people that are quitting on your team that you have to cover for their work, or their processes that we need to put in place? And I'm telling you, since we did that and figured out what was causing her burnout and how to deal with it, I haven't seen her like that again. And now she knows how to teach other people how to do that. So just identifying the signs. And I'm actually in a phase right now where like restructuring my company a little bit and making some changes. And well, not restructuring, that's like a severe word, but making some changes internally, right? And this is a time where I might start burning out often. So I know that historically, when I've been in these situations, I get less sleep than I need to, or I'm not taking as good care of myself, or I'm unwinding with a glass of wine every freaking night, which is absolutely horrible for my sleep. So now I know when I'm in these situations, these are like the things not to do. Sleep has to be a priority, because when I haven't slept enough, then I do not have like the mental capacity to deal with everything that's happening. So identifying, and then deleting and delegating are two big things that I do. So I look at my to-do list when I'm this busy, and I'm like, what do I need to do? And what do I not need to do? Like there's a lot of things that are, oh, that's nice to do, or that's been on my list forever, so I'm going to prioritize it, but you don't necessarily have to do it right now. So that's a big one. And then, I mean, I'm lucky to have help, right? And an assistant. So she takes a lot off my plate. She's constantly like, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? And that is very, very helpful. Everyone does not have that, that privilege to have that help, but.
Exactly. Well, it sounds like you're very self-aware, which I feel like a lot of people are not, and it's hard to become self-aware. You have to really get to know yourself and what are your stressors when you're pushing yourself too much. And I love how you have like an open door policy with your employees. I think that's huge. I feel like companies are definitely working on that, where they're trying to get more of the employees' opinions on what actually matters and why are they burning out, right? And I was curious, how many hours of sleep do you get on like an average day or like during those nights we were drinking wine every night. Obviously it probably differs, right?
Yeah. So I have this Whoop strap that is like, I saw an ad for it on Instagram like years ago, and it was like worn by professional athletes for their performance. And I was like, I probably don't need that. I'm certainly not a professional athlete, but it's really cool because the amount of data that it gives you is insane. Like it tells you how many disturbances you have at night and how much time you're actually awake while you're sleeping. And before I started wearing this, I would put myself in bed for 7 to 7.5 hours. And I learned that I was really getting like 6 to 6.5 hours of sleep. That's why I was so freaking tired every day. And so like sometimes just having that knowledge is the power that you need to change your habits. Now I know I have to put myself in bed for a minimum of like 7.5 to 8 hours a night if I want to feel well the next day. So usually I'm getting about 7.
I need to buy the watch. And what is it called again, Jackie?
Whoop. Whoop,
Okay.
whoop. It's WHOOP. It is seriously like, I got this and I was like, oh, this is kind of ugly. Am I going to wear this all the time? No, I've been religiously wearing it for almost 2 years now. I'm obsessed.
Well, I definitely want one, and that was not sponsored, just so everyone knows. So
I should be making money on this thing though.
it's good. Well, this is recorded, so you can always send it over to them after. So advice for future entrepreneurs. What advice would you give to college graduates who want to become an entrepreneur and like get into this crazy world?
I feel like the first thing you have to do is think about why you want to do it. There's a lot of people, I talk to people all the time that are like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, cool, why? Like, what are the things that you're searching for? And is entrepreneurship the best way to get there? Because I think it looks really cool online. It looks really cool on Instagram, but like most of the process is not that cool, to be honest. It's like lost sleep, a lot of hard work, and there's a lot that goes into it. So if you consider why and you're doing it for the right reasons, whatever those reasons are to you, then I would say my next best piece of advice is to just start and get started. There's a lot of analysis paralysis that goes into the process of creating something that's your own, because it's literally like the world is your oyster, right? You can create anything you want. So just starting, going and having sales conversations with people and understanding, like, is the product or service that you want to create something that people want? How much might they pay for it? I think telling people what you want to do and starting to have those conversations helps you with accountability as well.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely have a business plan. So after college, I worked at Harley Davidson for I think 3-4 years. And I actually quit Harley, which was like my dream job at the time. And I started a company called Jax Taylor, which I'm sure you're aware of. And yep. I should have had this conversation with you because I wasn't happy with Harley at that time. Just being there for a few years, I was burning out and I thought Harley was the end all be all. So that's why I quit and I started my own company, but I did not have a business plan put together. I didn't know what it took to be an entrepreneur. And then I quickly realized that I shouldn't have quit Harley Davidson and that, this world, it's crazy. You definitely have to put in the hours. But it is cool if you do have a great idea. And it is nice if you're the founder because you have like all the creative ideas like are all possible. You just have to really work for it.
Yeah, man. It's hard. It is not this like, I think people are talking about this more and more now, but like the whole like, oh, look at all the money I had from starting a company on Instagram kind of thing is like, dude, most people don't get there and half of what you see is fake anyway. So it's just like, you have to make sure that you really know what you're getting into. And I'm glad that people are having more honest conversations about it now.
Yeah, I've definitely seen people like post about their Porsches and whatnot. So that is definitely a world that we live in. And I think honest conversations are very important. So let's talk about culture and values. Both are very important within a company. So what kind of culture exists at Accelity and how did you establish that culture?
Yeah. I have a podcast and I was recording a podcast about this the other day and thought through this question. And I don't think I went about establishing my culture in the right way up front. I think that I was like, oh, establishing the culture, like that is the, the kind of work that I don't want to do. And, like, because it's hard and it's nebulous and it's a big, important thing. And I put it in the hands of other people in my company. And I think it turned out okay for a few years. And then I needed to take a step back and be like, okay, I need to be really intentional. Culture comes from the top, and I have to define this, and I have to talk to people about it and talk with people to see what they want it to be, right?
Mhm.
So I would say our culture now is very flexible. It's very personal. I have a pretty good personal relationship with most people on my team, which I think is really good. And I know, like, I see them hanging out outside the office or just like on random meetings, chatting all the time. And I think that's really good because it's discouraged in a lot of companies to, like, waste time or whatever. And then I think the last thing too is like the baseline of the company is respect. My company is almost all women, and I think that helps us. Not that men are bad, but I know that men sometimes talk to each other and are very, very straightforward in a way that sometimes women might not, right? And so we try to just be really, really respectful of each other. Like, there's no yelling. If you say something crappy in a meeting, you better go apologize for it. Whereas we have some clients that, like, they yell at each other on meetings, and we're like, ooh, I mean, I've gotten yelled at by a client or two, and I'm like, I do not want to be spoken to that way, because it doesn't motivate me to be yelled at. And I think it doesn't motivate the rest of the team either. So I don't know. I would say those are the tenets of the culture. We're fully remote now.
Okay.
And it's like, I don't know, as long as your work is getting done, I think we're good to go. We used to track every minute as an agency of your time. And now we only track billable time. And it's like, great. If you're like getting your billable time in and you're working with clients as you should, and clients are happy, then we're good to go. I think a lot more companies are adopting this mindset now.
Hopefully, I couldn't agree more. Fingers crossed. Thinking different is good as well. I feel like you have lots of different thoughts compared to other entrepreneurs or women that are entrepreneurs. So what is one thing about, entrepreneurship you find true that most people would probably disagree with?
This is a really good question. When you sent me the prep questions, I was like, thinking through this. So I guess my answer is, there are a lot of entrepreneurs that say they start to get flexibility. That's why I started. I was like, I have a baby at home. I want a more flexible schedule. I don't want to work as much, whatever. And I think the real truth of it is that most people never get there, and yet no one wants to admit it. Right. So there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are like, I have my time back. I report to myself. I'll never work for anyone else again. When really it only gets harder 9 out of 10, probably 99 out of 100 times. It only gets more difficult. And you may report to yourself, but you're going to put in more hours. And if you have employees, you're not just like jet setting around the world while your employees are back at the office running your company most often. Because until you get to a certain size, you are a big part of the company. So I think that's just a common misconception. And I think that no one wants to admit that they don't have the flexibility that they thought they might get.
Well, I love your response. And from the audience, we have some comments, no questions yet, but they love all this insight, and being an authentic brand is huge. And then we have another one from Alicia: lead with love, it will come back tenfold, which I couldn't agree with more. I think it's really important to be authentic, true, and just really treat your employees well. Because if you don't do that, and if you don't have a good culture, they're going to leave most likely, and find a place that has like a very well established culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've worked in a few corporate environments before starting this company, and I was like, here are some things that I want to model after, and here are some things that I absolutely don't want to do. And so having that knowledge before I started kind of like building my own team and culture was really helpful.
I was going to ask you another question that was not in the prep questions, but since we're talking about like corporate world, is there anything you like miss from the corporate world that you don't have currently?
Yeah, I mean, I am the only like owner of the company. And so I kind of miss having friends at work. Like I have friends at work, but at the end of the day, I'm their boss and they always see me through that lens, right? And I remember, God, when I started in corporate, just like screwing around, playing pranks on each other in our cubicles, and it was fun. And I kind of miss having work friends. I think if I let my barriers down a little bit, I would have more work friends, but it's like towing this line of like professional, being the boss, being friendly. It's like with my kids too. Like I want to be friendly, but I can't necessarily be their friends at this moment because I need them to like respect me.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a fine line. You're like, when do I cross? And if I do cross, how do I act? But you also are like super
Mhm.
involved within like the Milwaukee community, which is huge. I feel Milwaukee's
Yeah.
just like sprouting. Not that it wasn't
Yeah.
there before, but there's just so many new businesses coming. I like to think that's like the Bucks too. I like the Pfizer Forum and Giannis. But
Yeah.
obviously you're super involved in Milwaukee in general. Like you're the original founder of Women's Entrepreneurship Week, which is huge. Do you see like a difference when you're still a founder, obviously, but do people treat you as like a boss still, or is it more, have you found like good friends through there or like business connections?
I have a lot of good friends that I've met in Milwaukee and business connections that are, I feel like one thing that you have to do when you're a founder is look for people that will be your truth tellers and are willing to tell you like how it is and when you're screwing up. And I've met a lot of those people that are just like, we're just really honest with each other. And I think that's very cool because you have to be willing to like look at yourself as you're growing a company. Yeah, I love it here. And yeah, speaking of Giannis, have you seen his videos on Instagram? He's like the cutest man alive. I can't.
I do follow him on Instagram, and I definitely have to agree on
He's so
that.
adorable.
I need to go to Bucks game though, for the next season because I did not go to any Bucks games. And I have connections there too, and I still didn't go, so I'm a little little
You
upset
have to
about that.
go.
But I'll have to
Yeah.
leave Chicago and come back to Milwaukee. All right, so lessons learned. I'm sure you learned so many lessons, and maybe we can hone in on like one or two. But what are some of the biggest entrepreneurship lessons that have really impacted how you work? And what was it like before you learned? And then what was it like after?
I think one of the biggest things that you realize as you build a company is like, I don't want to sound negative, but I do want to be truthful in that when you start a company, it is sometimes hard to find support. Like, I feel like when you're in grade school and you're like, I want to be a doctor, everyone's like, that's amazing. And if you're like, I want to start a company, everyone's like, maybe don't though, like that's too risky. I don't know what it is, but I feel like people really project onto you and people don't really support you until you reach some level of success, whatever that is, right? And then people are like, oh, cool, look what this person's doing. Like, you're doing such a great job. I'm so proud to know you. And it's like, you have to be so self-motivated and you have to be so like thick-skinned to get through all of that. And so I definitely did not have the thick skin that I have now
Yep.
before. And now I'm like, people will always doubt you. And it's even more fuel to push through it.
Yeah.
But I did not quite know when I signed up for this what that was going to be like.
I would say, yeah, same thing when I thought I was going to be very entrepreneur. Get into that. My parents were obviously supportive, but very scared that I was quitting Harley at that time. And
Mm-hmm.
then I also, you have friends that are kind of concerned, but then once you like throw a cool event or your website's live, they're like, oh, wow, she's actually really serious about this. I
Yeah.
also think when entrepreneurs get very passionate about their brand. Obviously, they're going to be passionate about their personal brand or their company. Sometimes it's hard to let that company go. Have you like started a company that is no longer around nowadays, or everything you started is like super successful? I know.
No. So the first company that I started was a vegan cookie company, actually. I mean, very personal. My ex-husband wanted to go and get his MBA. And then he was like, never mind, I'm going to start a company. And I was like, oh. And he was like, let's buy these cookie recipes that are for sale on Craigslist in New York and try to make a business out of it. And I was like, okay. So we did. And it was literally like searching for packaging online and creating labels in Vistaprint and just like the scrappiest thing you've ever seen, standing in the grocery store handing out cookies on the weekends. We eventually did sell it for like a few $1,000s to a woman that lives in Madison, and
Wow.
it's no longer around, which is fine. I mean, I like almost blocked that part of my life out. It was so freaking hard. And I learned so much, but yeah, that brand is no longer around. And then Women's Entrepreneurship Week, we passed on to new leadership last year as well. But that one is still going, and she's doing a fantastic job.
Amazing. I'll have to go to it this year if it's coming up. And when is that Entrepreneurship Week in Milwaukee? Just for anyone who's like in the Midwest.
I think it was last November, but it was all online. And I'm wondering if it's going to come back in person this year. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not making the decisions anymore.
That's true. We will see. We have a question from the audience. What do you feel is the biggest misconception about being an entrepreneur, specifically a female leader?
I think that a lot of people see women as there's such a weird conversation going on around this, around like women being like soft and how they run a company and how women should be in business, you know, as like the male counterpart to the men who are very straightforward and whatever it may be. And I've always been much more like I function more like a man, I guess, in business than people would expect me to. And then there's another conversation that's going on that's like, oh, well, are women trying too hard to be like men in the workplace? And I think the misconception is that we can be whoever we want to be, and we don't have to fit into a certain mold or a certain leadership type. And everyone, no matter your gender, is completely different. And I don't know, it's very interesting. I think that women just get a bad rap as the founders of like, oh, not being serious about scaling or not being as hardcore as men. And it's like, just let us be. I don't know.
No, I agree. Just be yourself. It's harder said than done, but to be yourself and then not worry what others think about you, but you can't win everyone over, right? So everyone's going to have an opinion about something, right? And then
literally everyone.
Exactly. And I know you're super active on LinkedIn as well. I've been seeing lots of posts about, it's like, again, this is not on the prep question, so I'm going to hit you with this. But what do you think about like the boss babes, or, you know, those more like female entrepreneur? I've seen people just post like, let's just call ourselves leaders or entrepreneurs. Why do we have to put like woman in front of it, behind it, or boss babes? What do you think about that? Are you like all for those woman names, or are you more like, let's just be leaders and be out there like the men as well?
Yeah. Another one is like mompreneur. People love to use that term. And then some women get mad about it. And I'm like, I see the case for it, because being an entrepreneur as a mom is more rare than some other types of, or like people that are entrepreneurs. Being an entrepreneur as a woman is more rare. So I see why people want to do it. And I myself do not use those terms. So I'm not offended, but I don't love it.
Yeah. I was like, that's the best position to be in. You don't love it, you don't use it, but you don't mind if other people do, which I think is the best position you could probably be in. Again, standing out, there's so many companies out there, agencies. So what makes your company stand out from all the other businesses in your niche, whether it's like Milwaukee or just like in general?
I think that it's specialization, because we are so specialized. Like, we work with a bunch of companies that sell software to insurance companies. That is extremely specific, right? Called insurtech marketing. And so when we run campaigns or we reach out to people that are selling insurtech software, they'll respond and, like, oh, we're not hiring an agency right now, but if we were, you would be our first choice, or we've totally heard of you. And it's like, cool. We have gotten so specialized in this one area that people are starting to know us, because who specializes in marketing to insurance companies? Not a lot. So I think that specialization is a really, really good way to grow, and often overlooked by people.
I love that. And that kind of brings me into, staying relevant. So what online marketing techniques do you use to promote your company? Obviously, you have a huge personal brand on LinkedIn as well. And how do you recommend, other entrepreneurs to start building out their personal brand to really like stand out with that oversaturated professionals market?
To me, honestly, if you're starting a company from scratch, starting a personal brand is the best way to go, the very best way to go, because people connect with people. And it is very, very hard to start driving web traffic to a brand new website unless you have budget, which a lot of people do not have budget. So if you're like scrappy bootstrapping, which is exactly what I did, I would get out there and start putting yourself out there. And we've talked about LinkedIn a few times. I remember Gary Vee like 5 years ago was like, LinkedIn is the next Facebook. And everyone was like, okay. And then it turned out to be, and there's still incredible reach that is available on LinkedIn organically, which is not similar. Facebook, you can't even, I post on Facebook just because it's like, oh, well, I guess I should, it's not like, I bet this is going to get a lot of traction, because you have to pay if you want people to see on Facebook. However, on LinkedIn, there's still a really incredible organic opportunity to get out there. And it's getting easier to market from company pages on LinkedIn as well. Like they just introduced a new videos tab, so you can put videos out on behalf of your company. But it's always easier to launch something when you have a personal brand. So I know now that anything I launch, I can get eyeballs on it because I built a personal brand. So it's the best way to go, in my opinion.
I love that. I'm kind of going through my personal brand creation right now. I know we follow each other on Instagram, so it was really fun doing the photo shoots and doing the logos. And that's obviously to help me with influential as well. If anybody needs any influencer campaigns done, come to me after the summit. But
I saw the pictures that you were posting, and you're like working on something new. And I was like, what is it? And now I know. I feel like I'm in the early now.
Hopefully some of my friends are on, and some people that are in my network, and now they have the inside scoop, right? But we are running short on time. We have a few more questions for Jackie. So now is the time, if you're in the audience, to ask away, and I'll look in that Q&A. But Jackie, how do you find like top talent? So what are your tips for building a great team? I know Stephanie is actually at your company, and we went to UW Whitewater together. So how are you attracting like these amazing people and getting them to like stay?
I really think that, I hate to be like, every answer is a personal brand, but when you have a really good brand, like Stephanie, when she was in the hiring process, told us that she had been following the company for years and really wanted to work at the business. And I have a few other people that are like, oh, I was waiting for an opportunity to apply for something that was a fit for me. That is really freaking cool. And at a company our size, it's abnormal. Usually you're like begging people to come to a small business because it's like, it's risky and you're going to have to work really hard and do a lot of different things, but do you want to work with me? So I think that having that really strong brand and having people on the team that can speak to what it's like to work in the business and just get really honest, back to that honesty piece about it, is very helpful.
I also think culture plays like a huge role in this too. Like, for sure. I worked at TikTok prior to Influential and being part of this team. And like Influential was super open about like their culture, and they were very open about salary, which I also think that a lot of companies don't do, which really attracted me to join Influential, just because of culture, and there's so much opportunity to grow within the smaller sales team. Like, for example, I'm moderating, I moderated a panel today in Fireside Chat, which is awesome. So I think it's really good to provide your employees with those opportunities as well.
For sure.
All right. So I have one more question, and we might finish early. So feel free to ask questions away, guys. So supporting women in the workplace. How does your company help women in the workplace related to professional development, training, career advancement, like benefits, etc.?
Well, I mean, I think we have 20 full-time employees and 2 of them are men. So we are a very woman-focused workplace. I think that a big part of what we do, well, one is promoting from within. 2 of my leaders were like my very first employees ever, and they have been with me and been in like 4 different roles each, and just kind of like evolved as the company evolved. And now we're doing that with other people on the team and trying to just take them with us. Also teaching women, I think, to ask for what you want. That's one of the sayings we use internally: you don't get what you don't ask for. And it's like, whenever someone comes to me and is like, I want a raise, you taught me how to do this, so now you have to give me more money. And I'm like, yeah, I did. And yes, we will give you more money. So I just think there's like a lot of development that's specific to women that we should be doing that no one is doing. And so I'm just trying to create the next generation of like bold female leaders.
I love that. We need more of them, right?
Love it.
What are, it could be 1 or 2, maybe 3 like important habits that you do daily, or maybe weekly or monthly, it could be anything, to be a successful entrepreneur. I know you talked about like blocking off your calendar. Is there anything else that you would recommend?
Yeah, something I do at least annually is a time audit where I track like every single minute of a full week and look at how am I really spending my time? Because it's easy to sit at your computer for 8, 9, 10 hours and be like, oh, I worked all day. But did you? Like, how much time were you sitting on Slack? How much time were you in meetings that you didn't need to be in? So auditing and just making sure you're making the best use of your time, I would say, is one. When I started working out consistently, it totally changed my life, and it changed my attitude and how I show up every day. So I think that like taking care of yourself physically and taking care of yourself mentally, especially right now with everything that's happening, has to be a focus, and you have to make time for it. It can't be the thing that falls off your list every single time you get busy. So I don't know, I think that's 3.
Yeah, time management, that's something I'm always working on. Like not checking your emails constantly and just kind of having an hour or 2 where you're sending out emails and prospecting. That's a big one. And I feel like it takes time to learn how you work the best and most efficiently. And I'm curious, how did you come up with Accelity, like the name of your company?
So when I worked in corporate, we were rebranding a company that we acquired. And it was one of the names that we came up with when we were rebranding. And I was like, oh, I'm going to steal that if we don't use it. And we didn't. And then like 5 years later, we were rebranding, because at first it was like my name consulting. I was like, oh, I'm getting clients, I need a company name. All right, let's go with Jackie Consulting. It's just like, whatever, I need an LLC. So we went to rebrand, and I was like, yes, I already have a name. And then people were like, no one's going to know how to pronounce it. And I was like, too bad, I already picked it, it's over. So that's the story.
Exactly. I think using your name is really important. Obviously, it's not like a super creative, but I feel like it sticks and it's like your brand. So why not use your own name? Totally makes sense. It doesn't have to be like a super creative name, right? It could just be your name.
That's something that holds people up when they get started. It's like, man, if you are trying to grow a business, you don't have a name, just pick something. You can always change it, but let's start growing this thing.
Yeah, the name, the colors, everything. And then how do you foster creative thinking? Like, obviously we're kind of on the topic of logos and names, but how do you continue to be like creative throughout your day, just being a CEO and a speaker? You do so many speaking events. So I want to say thanks for joining ours.
Yes, for sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Creative thinking, I think it's kind of built in, which is kind of a cop-out answer. But the other part of that is I like to think about everything as like a what if we could. So there's a lot of situations that are like, we can't really do that, or that's too much money. And it's like, well, what if we could? Is there a different route that we could take? Is there a different tool we could use? Could we find a free way to do this? I think that creative thinking doesn't always have to be like art, like people think of it. Like that creative problem solving is something that I incorporate into my day, and it keeps me challenged every day.
Thank you.
Jackie, I feel like if you were to come up with another company, you could probably be a life coach, because you drop so many gems, not only for those of us on the line that are pursuing entrepreneurial, I struggle with that word, endeavors, but for those of us who have corporate positions, just the idea of building up your personal brand and taking care of yourself and sleep and maybe not wine every night, which, you know, has definitely been a thing for me. But I love it all. It's so fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Taylor, thank you for being such an excellent moderator.